Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and today I'm talking with Andy Blomme. He is a member of the Fairfax Presbyterian Church here in the city of Fairfax, where the church members have gotten together and have proposed building affordable housing on part of their parking lot here in the city, 10 townhouse units. This project has been going on for a while, and from the very beginning, Andy Blomme has been involved. Thank you so much, Andy, for joining us here.
Thank you, Catherine. Delighted to be here to talk about our program.
So I am involved with the Fairfax Citizens for Smarter Growth here in the city of Fairfax. So I have been aware of this project for a long time, but I did not know how far back it actually went as far as the decision that the church made to actually give this land and put together what I think is an extraordinary collaboration of organizations to build this housing. So kind of walk us through the thinking of the church going back to the beginning.
I'll be happy to. Well, it all started with our, back in 2015, we realized we had a lot of work we needed to do around the church, a lot of projects we needed to do. And so we started a capital campaign. But our church is very mission focused. My goodness, we aid girls in Guatemala. We help out in Honduras. We sponsor a week of the local hypothermia shelter where we bring members in out of the cold. And there are so many other missions. It's what we do at the church. And so we looked around wanting a mission anchor as part of the capital campaign, and we recognized the need for affordable housing. It's hard to miss here in the city of Fairfax, frankly. And we said, well, let's see if we can raise money for this project, and we'll put a team together. And so we called it the Affordable Housing Implementation Team. And our first step was to look at what's out there. How can we, if we raise this money, how can we move forward? And we investigated all sorts of options. We investigated a senior living community. We investigated tiny homes and their feasibility. And we reached out to other established nonprofits and asked for them to give presentations to us. And we narrowed it down to Habitat for Humanity of Northern Virginia, who is a builder developer I'm sure you're well acquainted with. Homestretch, which provides affordable housing to members in need of assistance, and the Home Aid Group, which is a builders consortium that provides reduced cost materials and reduced cost trade labor. And we asked each of the three of them to come in and give us a presentation on how they thought they could work with us. And then a miracle happened, frankly. They did something that had never happened before. They all called each other before the meetings and said, hey, would you mind if we came in and gave a joint presentation? And we said, that sounds great. And they came in with the presentation. And the underlying theme, of course, being affordable housing, is each of them brought something so valuable to the table to make homes in Fairfax more affordable. They all brought what was critical, and they liked what we were offering, which was, of course, we have the land. That's a very expensive commodity, obviously. And Habitat brings their building expertise and their vetting ability. Homestretch, the work they do in aiding families in dire need, spouses that are victims of abuse that need to get out of their living arrangement right away with their children. It really will, it's very moving to hear many of their stories. And then Home Aid, with their ability to provide not cheap materials, but materials that at a much lesser cost, and then trade labor and expertise, as you know how expensive that can be. You bring all four of those entities together: the land, the builder, the vetter, the temporary housing expertise, and then the building materials. And frankly, you have a combination that it's new, but it's tough to beat. And we have found them to be wonderful partners. Honestly, we've worked with Homestretch for quite a while. We were very familiar with their work beforehand, but Habitat is a new partner, and so is Home Aid. And we have just been grateful to be able to work with them the whole time.
Well, as I said, I've referred to this, and I've talked a lot about this collaboration. Instead of one vendor stepping up, each of them recognized they had a piece of an excellent collaboration and a very successful collaboration. And so what the church has to offer, as you pointed out, is the land. And so the land, which is the most expensive part of building homes, is being given on a 99-year lease. And so There's all kinds of tests as far as who is eligible to move into this housing, how Habitat for Humanity will vet them, the maintenance of the properties so that they're kept, in great order. All of this, you've spent years working out the details and also working with the neighbors, because this borders Westmore, which is a long-established neighborhood, as so many of the neighborhoods in Fairfax City, including the one I live in, are post-World War II neighborhoods, and they've been there a long time. And then you're bordered on the other side by Cameron Glen, which is a relatively new townhouse development of very high-end townhomes, right?
Correct.
And across the street, interestingly enough, used to be Oak Knolls. And Oak Knolls were old garden style apartments, and they were the affordable housing in that location because they were there when I started George Mason in 1981, and they weren't new then. But as far as fast tracking projects, I have to say what surprised me is that when the owner of Oak Knolls passed away, her family, with great dispatch, sold the land to a developer, and with great dispatch, Mount Vineyard was built. And it is condos and it's townhouses, and it's very expensive. So people need to understand that widely available housing units, which would be considered affordable housing or workforce housing because people could afford to live there who worked in the city, is now gone. And yeah, so I just want people to understand why the Presbyterian Church, is proposing these 10 townhouses in this location, so that people understand what is all around these proposed 10 townhouses.
That's a really great point, Catherine. And frankly, in taking our message to the congregation about what we wanted to do, we did quite a bit of investigation and found that, because one of the questions would be, well, I'm all for affordable housing, but must it be on the church property? Because, couldn't we just go buy a parcel somewhere? And given that we talked about a budget, say, of $400,000, I said, please go shopping with $400,000 in the city of Fairfax. See what you can get. You could possibly get one not great condition 2-bedroom townhome. Trying to rent in the city of Fairfax is extraordinarily difficult. I'm the father of a new college graduate looking to live in the area, and if you work with the 30% rule that you shouldn't spend more than 30% of your income on your housing, he could possibly afford a room in someone's house if he didn't share the rent with someone else. These are well known to your listeners, but this is what we were up against: is some honestly antiquated view that there's plenty of land out there on the cheap where you can build affordable housing, but there really is not. It is, especially within the city of Fairfax. As you point out, we're surrounded by homes on all three sides and a nursing center on the north side, and affordable housing is not there. So we thought we could provide something, and not just number of units. Frankly, our number of units is small compared to some of the other developments. But we will have 3-bedroom units, 3-bedroom townhomes, and for families, those are as scarce as hen's teeth. You just don't see them, and those are in great need. So we think, although small, we can contribute a vital piece to the puzzle.
I think the exciting thing about this too is that it shows what innovative thinking outside the box can do in actually solving the problem of affordable housing, and also the fact that you're embedding 10 townhomes that are bordered by other communities of both townhomes and single family homes, and then condos and townhomes across the street. One of the things Sharon Bulova talked about when she was chair of the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors is that affordable housing needs to be woven into the fabric of existing neighborhoods. They need to be, we're not the Bronx. We're not building 30-story housing projects in Fairfax County. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to offer decent housing for families that they can afford to raise their children along with everyone else's children with a fairly decent quality of life in our communities. It benefits our community to offer this kind of housing.
I could not agree more. And one of the things we've been very conscious about it is putting out the word that these homes will be built in the style of the church itself. They're being designed by a very high dollar architect contributing his work pro bono. The materials, as I mentioned, are top level materials from homemade. One of the things I feel like we're fighting against is a mentality of what people remember affordable housing being, like you were speaking of, high rises with bars on the window. This couldn't be farther from that. These townhomes are being specifically designed and built to mesh with the community, to be a part of the community, because we want their residents to be a part of the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that sometimes when people hear affordable housing, they bring a lot of outdated, quite frankly, notions of what that means in the 21st century in a suburban small city like Fairfax. This, as you point out, the townhouses will be complementary to both the church and other housing that borders it all the way around. And what we're offering is a chance for families who are working hard. And let's face it, as you point out, most of them are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And this just doesn't help to have a healthy community when people's income is completely absorbed by housing costs.
Absolutely. And to absolutely underscore your point about being a part of the community, I'll tell a story about the design. And when we first started looking at different options to build them, for some reason, there were some things in favor of perhaps wrapping there'll be 2 rows of 5 townhomes and putting 1 row of townhomes on the east side and 1 row of townhomes on the north side around the corner of the parking lot. But when we looked at that, we said, well, but they'll be looking out at a parking lot. Why it would be so much better from a community standpoint to have doors face doors, so that they know their neighbors, so that they look out for each other like all good neighbors do. And so that we feel like at every step of the way, we've taken the future residents' needs and wishes and the desire to create a comprehensive community. We've taken all that into account to the best we can.
And I think that's an important part of this process too, is to not make assumptions about who will be living there. We culturally have a tendency to criminalize poverty, whether we intend to or not. We do. We think that somehow poor people are the cause of their own situation. And as you said, when Homestretch brings people, like as they did to your congregation, to talk about their personal experience, you realize that but for the grace of God, go any one of us. And so when people need affordable housing for whatever reason, whether it's for a temporary reason or a longer term reason, we as a community need to be there to provide that for them. So we have to go to a short break, but we're going to come back from this break and continue talking with Andy Blomme of the Fairfax Presbyterian Church about this affordable housing project here in Fairfax City. It's something that I hope people will really take to heart, find out more about, and realize that it's a blueprint for success in the future. Join us after the break.
Our fight against coronavirus isn't over. Let's wear face masks in public, stay 6 feet or more from others, follow state and local guidelines, and wash our hands frequently. Let's move forward together. Learn more at coronavirus.gov.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and today we're talking with Andy Blomme. He is a member of the Fairfax Presbyterian Church here in the city of Fairfax, and they are working to build an affordable housing project on land that they have for 10 townhomes here in Fairfax City. Thank you so much, Andy, for taking the time to explain this very complex solution to a very big problem we're experiencing throughout the county and throughout Northern Virginia, and quite frankly, throughout the country. Talk a little bit about how this progressed from your idea to submitting a proposal to doing community outreach, and some of the things that you have heard back from all of these things over the intervening, what's it been, 5 years?
Oh, you're heading for 6. Yeah, it's really been quite a journey, and COVID obviously didn't help us. That slowed us down as well. But the first part of it, of course, was reaching out internally to our congregation, and they overwhelmingly voted to do it. But in hearing the congregational questions, that helped a great deal when we began our outreach to the surrounding community. We held, most significantly, we held a town hall in January of 2020, following some door-to-door outreach, door knocking, explaining what we were doing. And in that town hall, we had all of our partners with us. We gave an overview of the project. And then we did something a little bit different. We all got to, rather than passing the microphone around, we all stood around the edges of the room for as long as people had questions, so they could go individually to Homestretch or to Habitat with any of their questions. And we had mock-ups and elevations of what the early architectural renderings of what the property would be, and so we could thoroughly answer their questions. Since then, we've done virtual meetings with Westmore Citizens Association. We're planning additional outreach to Cameron Glen beyond what we've already done, and it's been very educational for us because we've listened to many of their concerns. One of the people involved, for example, brought up the fact that there's lighting over the proposed potential new parking lot, and how important it would be to make sure those lights did not aim at the surrounding development. It's a great point, and we might want to make sure we incorporate that. There's been concern about the school children having a good, safe bus stop, and Habitat is working on that to make sure there's a good bus stop. It really, the questions and issues have run the gamut, but I think we're working very hard to make sure that there's a fair answer. I won't say that every answer we provided is loved by the person hearing it, but they know we either are giving them the best answer we have, or we're going back to look it up. And to your other question about other things that have come up, I'm a novice when it comes to affordable housing, but I have been surprised at some of the things that have had to be done that I didn't see coming. For example, Habitat prevailed upon a contractor to do pro bono work for a traffic study, which to begin with surprised me, because I thought, my goodness, there are only 10 townhomes. How many cars could there be relative to, we host support group meetings during the week, and there are many cars for that, many more than the townhomes would ever have. But their traffic study was done, and we submitted our application, and the city had said, well, you did that pre-COVID, we need one post-COVID. And so we went back to the contractor, and they agreed to do another pro bono traffic study, which would normally cost about $10,000 or $15,000. We did that, and then the city said, well, now COVID's over, we might need a third study. And we finally talked ourselves out of having to do the third study. I think they agreed that that wouldn't be altogether sensible. But other things have frankly been shocking. An architectural survey, archaeological survey still needs to be done on one area of the church. And the cost, the beginning cost, if nothing is located, is $28,000. And that's stunning to me, because we only have we're only building 10 townhomes. That's a $2,800 per townhome tax, in a way, or an increase on keeping it from being as affordable as it can be. I'm not in any way impugning the need for archaeological surveys. I'm simply stating that it's one more indication of why building affordable housing is so challenging. Meeting all of these needs and requirements it creates more costs that decreases affordability.
Absolutely. And I think you bring up a good point, is that most of us are not experts on affordable housing. We can see the need. We can see that solutions need to be brought to the table. And I think your church members and the collaboration that you brought together are working very hard to do that. I also think, too, that, doing outreach doesn't necessarily bring to these meetings the most representative cross-section of the people living there. Oftentimes, meetings like that tend to be predominated by people with the gravest concerns about their property values, or about crime, or about traffic, and not necessarily the neighbors who are like, this is a great idea, and I welcome this, and how can I help? And, what can we do to support it? So sometimes the meetings, to me, in my personal experience, have not necessarily been across the board representative of the feelings of the people living in the impacted neighborhoods.
I think you're right, Catherine. Well, sometimes I think some of the voices are louder in opposition than those that in support at times. But Things can even out in the end. There's a great story. I mentioned that we had held a virtual meeting with Westmore Citizens Association, and someone asked a question about, well, how do you know the people that live there won't be drug dealers? And I responded, well, because Habitat has a great vetting process. They're known all throughout the country for their great, the whole ownership process that they implement. But I also answered, frankly, I live in a nice neighborhood, and I don't know that my neighbors aren't drug dealers. But you really can't say. But that question and the implication that came with it so offended someone who was listening to that broadcast or that Zoom, and they contacted me afterward and have volunteered to speak at town halls, speak at public events, and go with us to meet with elected representatives. It was really rewarding to see that there's that kind of support, and frankly, we've had similar outreach from Cameron Glen. So we understand there's going to be opposition. It's just part of what we expect to see, but there's also support, genuine support from people that understand how critical this is, and also understand the fact that, the people in the income level that will be able to afford to purchase one of these homes, they're not usually recently homeless. They are policemen, they're firemen, they're teachers who now live in Manassas and commute into work because there's not affordable housing within the city.
And you bring up something important too about in this time of COVID, people not necessarily showing up to in-person city council meetings. Back in the day, when it was Scout on the Circle, that it was in the approval process, or the Moxley, it was in the approval process. And both of those are very big apartment complexes, brand new housing. The problem with brand new housing is that it's so expensive to build that it's not affordable. So back in the day, it was organizing people for set-asides. And so people actually showed up to city council meetings. They're like, we need set-asides to make some of these units affordable within a prescribed index, the AMI index, and the certain earning. And so without in-person city council meetings, I can imagine it's much harder to organize people to show up in support of this project if they don't know where to be. But, and there's not necessarily an easy way to sign up to give your testimony in front of the city council, which is what we did back in the day. So you've got some real hurdles in trying to find your support here in the city of Fairfax and to bring out the people who genuinely believe that this is a good thing for the city, and it builds a healthy community, and the diversity of housing is important to the health of our community. And again, these very large development projects, and Mount Vineyard too is extremely expensive housing. And so it is not answering the need of what the Presbyterian Church is proposing.
No, and your point about outreach is very critical. We signed everyone in to our town hall and got email addresses, and we can use those. We literally walk through the neighborhood handing out flyers to advertise when we'll be available and what we're doing, and to answer those questions. And we look forward to a lot more engagement as we progress down the line and as we get closer to the Planning Commission and City Council public meetings. We think we've got a great project here. It will be beneficial for the community. It will increase the tax base because while they won't be paying taxes on their land because they don't own the land, they will be paying taxes on the structure. So there will be that benefit to the city.
Absolutely. And they'll be participating in the life of Fairfax City. So what do you see as next steps? Do you have a hoped for timeline once some of these things like traffic studies are out of the way and it actually gets to the part where the application is presented to City Council for a vote? Do you have any idea of what we're looking at as far as the timeline?
Well, it's tough to put an exact timeline on it, but we have obviously submitted our rezoning application, and the city came back with somewhat surprising 9 full pages of questions for our application that Habitat, our developer, is in the process of putting the finishing touches on. So they'll be resubmitting the application for doing the resubmission on that shortly, and awaiting the next round of questions from the city. We'll answer those. And once those have been wrestled out, we hope for public meetings sometime in the early winter or late winter, early spring. That would be great.
So once you get approval, how, like I said, I was surprised at how quickly Mount Vineyard was built. It was like the quickest building development I think I've ever seen in the 20 plus years I've lived in Fairfax City. It was like, boom, it was there. So given, let's say that it's approved in May, when can we expect to actually see the townhomes built and people in them?
Well, when we first started this project, we thought they were going to have been completed in 2021. That's been a lesson for me too in my novice experience in affordable housing construction. But if everything goes well, we think from the time we have approval of the rezoning application, perhaps 12 to 18 months out, it would be great if we were turning keys. That would be excellent. But we've grown a little older and wiser in these 6 years, and so we'll be happy. However long it takes, we're going to keep pushing and pressing.
Well, and I commend your group of volunteers who truly thought outside the box and took on something that none of you are really an expert in doing, but you saw the need and your church membership decided to answer the need. So to me, this is like the best of America as far as I'm concerned. And I hope that people will go to your website, fairfaxpresbyterian.org, because you will be posting progress and more information. So if people are interested in how can I get involved and what can I do, or how can I track your progress, this website's probably the best. Am I right?
It is the best.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you, Andy. This has been very illuminating. And I hope that at some point, when all is said and done, you'll be on the speaking circuit to show other, faith communities how they can do the same thing. Because I think once you've shown that it's successful, that's what you're going to be asked to do. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And for those of you at home, this is what you need to know.